Hello, my friends. If you are over 60, like many of the wonderful people I work with every single day, you've probably had this moment sitting in a doctor's office holding a sheet of lab results, staring at the numbers for your cholesterol. The doctor glances quickly, maybe circles one or two in red and says, "Your LDL is high. We should start you on a statin." And then the conversation ends. But I want to pause with you here. I want you to hold that piece of paper in your hand and really see it in a different light. Because behind those numbers is a story, your story. It's not just cholesterol, it's how your liver is handling sugar, how your arteries are being treated, how your body is managing the fuel you feed it every day. And here's the truth I've seen again and again in over 30 years of working with older adults. Most people are never taught how to read that story. Doctors are busy, guidelines are outdated, and you walk out with more confusion than clarity. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever left the office thinking, but what does it actually mean for me? Let me tell you about a patient I'll call John. John was 67 when he came to me. He had always thought of himself as mostly healthy, a little overweight, but nothing major. His doctor told him, "Your LDL is 150. That's high. You need a statin." John felt uneasy. His brother had been on statins for years and struggled with muscle pain. He didn't want that path if it wasn't absolutely necessary. When John and I looked deeper, something fascinating emerged. His LDL was indeed a bit high, but his triglycerides were low, and his HDL, his so-called good cholesterol, was quite strong. What that meant in plain English is that the type of LDL he carried was more likely the large buoyant kind, the fluffy particles that float through the bloodstream without causing much trouble. His risk was not what the number on its own suggested. Now imagine another patient, Mary, age 72. Her LDL wasn't that high, just around 120. Her doctor said, "Good, you're safe." But when we looked at her triglycerides, they were creeping upward. Her HDL was low. And when we calculated her triglyceride to HDL ratio, it was over 3. That ratio told us something John's doctor had completely missed. Mary's bloodstream was filled with the dangerous, small, dense LDL particles, the ones that stick to vessel walls and spark the fires of inflammation that lead to heart attacks. Two people, two very different stories, both hidden behind the same simple label, LDL cholesterol. This is why I say with all the compassion and urgency I can, please don't let a single number decide your future. Total cholesterol, throw it in the trash. It tells you almost nothing. LDL alone, not enough. What matters is the relationship, the dance between triglycerides, HDL, and the type of LDL those numbers reveal. Now let me bring this down to earth with something you can feel in your daily life. Think about sugar, not just a spoonful in your coffee, but the hidden sugar in bread, cereal, pasta, fruit juice, even so-called healthy granola bars. Your liver has one main job with sugar: to protect you from having too much of it in your bloodstream. And how does it do that? It turns that sugar into fat, specifically into tiny packages called VLDL, which show up on your lab slip as triglycerides. Those triglycerides don't stay harmless. Over time, they shed their load and transform into the very thing we fear most: small, dense LDL. That is the true villain in the cholesterol story. And here's the key: if you see high triglycerides on your tests, it's your body waving a red flag saying, "I'm overwhelmed with sugar. Please help me." Have you noticed perhaps that after a holiday season full of sweets, your doctor tells you your numbers look worse? That's not a coincidence. It's your liver crying out after weeks of sugar overload. And on the flip side, here's the good news. It can change quickly. I once had a patient who cut out soda and refined carbs for a month. In just 4 weeks, his triglycerides dropped by nearly 100 points. Imagine that just by removing liquid sugar, his blood test looked like it belonged to a different person. So if you take one thing from this first part of our journey together, let it be this. Your numbers are not fixed. They are not a sentence handed down to you. They are a snapshot of what your liver and your lifestyle are doing today. And tomorrow, with a few choices, that picture can look entirely different. Before we close this section, I want you to do a little exercise with me. Next time you see your cholesterol panel, don't just ask, is my LDL high? Instead, ask yourself, what are my triglycerides doing? Where is my HDL low or strong and protective? What's my triglyceride to HDL ratio? If that ratio is 1.5 or less, smile, you are on a good path. If it's 2.5 or above, pause. That's a gentle nudge from your body asking you to make a change. And remember, the numbers don't define you, but they do reflect the story your body is telling. The story of sugar, fat, the liver, and the hidden dance happening inside you. I promise in the next part we'll go deeper. We'll explore how insulin ties into all this, why it's not just the diabetes hormone, but the conductor of your entire energy orchestra. And we'll talk about liver fat, a hidden troublemaker that many people never even think about yet holds the key to your long-term health. So my friend, hold on to hope. Your body is speaking through these numbers, and now finally you're learning the language. Welcome back, my friends. In the last part, we learned that cholesterol is not just a number, it's a language your body is speaking. We talked about triglycerides, HDL, and that powerful ratio between them. Now I want us to open the curtain a little wider and look at the true conductor of this entire orchestra, insulin. You've probably heard of insulin in the context of diabetes. Maybe you have a friend or sibling who takes insulin shots every day. So it's natural to think, insulin is the diabetes hormone. But that's not quite right. Yes, insulin lowers blood sugar, but in truth, insulin's deeper job is this. It's the storage hormone. It decides where energy goes when it isn't being burned. Let me ask you this. Have you ever noticed how two people can eat the same meal, but their bodies react so differently? One gains weight, the other stays slim. One feels sluggish, the other feels fine. Much of that comes down to how their bodies handle insulin. I remember a patient named Elaine, 70 years old, who came to me after years of struggling with her weight. She said, "Doctor, I don't understand. I don't eat that much, but I just keep gaining around my middle." When we checked her labs, something jumped out. Her fasting insulin was almost 3 times higher than it should have been. Her body was producing buckets of insulin just to manage the sugar load. And where was that extra energy being pushed? Straight into her liver and belly fat. This is the sneaky part. You don't need to have diabetes to have high insulin. In fact, you can have perfectly normal blood sugar, and yet your insulin could be working overtime in the background. And that excess insulin is what drives many of the diseases we fear most in our later years. Heart disease, dementia, even certain cancers. Now let's connect this back to cholesterol. When insulin is high, it signals the liver to store fat. The liver, poor thing, tries to keep up, but over time it starts filling with fat itself. We call this fatty liver. And fatty liver changes everything. When your liver is packed with fat, it stops handling sugar and fat properly. It begins to churn out those small, dense LDL particles we talked about earlier, the ones that burrow into artery walls. So when I see a patient with high triglycerides, low HDL, and a creeping waistline, I don't just see cholesterol. I see a liver waving its hands, shouting, "I'm overwhelmed. Too much sugar, too much insulin. Please slow down. Let me pause and ask you, have you or someone you love ever been told your liver enzymes are a little high, but it's nothing to worry about? I hear this so often. Doctors glance at a test called ALT, and if it's under 40, they say all good. But let me share a secret. The true healthy cutoff is closer to 25. Anything above that is often a whisper of liver fat. Think about that for a moment. Half of Americans today are estimated to have fatty liver, and most don't even know it. It doesn't hurt. You can't feel it, but it quietly changes your cholesterol pattern, your insulin resistance, and your risk for heart disease. Let me tell you another story. Sam, age 65, came to me with what looked like normal labs. His LDL was 130, HDL 45, triglycerides 150. His doctor said, pretty average for your age, nothing to do. But when I looked deeper, his triglyceride to HDL ratio was over 3. His ALT was 37. To most, that number is normal. To me, it was a red flag. We ordered an ultrasound and sure enough, fatty liver. Now here's the hopeful part. 6 months later, after Sam cut out sugary drinks, reduced bread and pasta, and added a gentle walking routine after dinner, his ALT dropped to 22, triglycerides fell under 100, HDL climbed to 55. His liver cleared some of that fat and his energy returned. He told me, "Doctor, I feel like I'm 20 years younger." This is why I say your liver is the hidden hero in your cholesterol story. When it's healthy, everything flows better. When it's burdened, all the numbers on your panel start drifting in the wrong direction. And it's not just about the liver. Remember insulin. When your liver is fatty, your pancreas has to shout louder, releasing more and more insulin to get the liver's attention. That extra insulin floods the whole body. It tells fat cells to grow. It signals artery walls in ways that lead to plaque. It even fuels the growth of certain cancers. I often tell my patients insulin is like fire. A little in the right place warms the house and keeps you alive. Too much spreading everywhere and it burns the whole village down. So what can you do right now? The first and simplest step is awareness. Next time you see your lab slip, look beyond LDL. Ask, what is my fasting insulin? If your doctor hasn't ordered it, request it. Ideally, you want it under 6. Wait, what is my ALT? If it's above 25, think liver fat, even if your doctor says normal. How is my triglyceride to HDL ratio? If it's high, that points to insulin resistance. And if your doctor doesn't know how to interpret these, don't be discouraged. You now have the knowledge to ask better questions, to push for deeper answers. Before we wrap this section, I want to invite you to imagine something. Picture your liver not as a forgotten organ tucked away under your rib cage, but as the manager of your body's energy bank. Every spoon of sugar, every slice of white bread, every glass of juice, it all lands on your liver's desk. When the pile is small, it files things neatly. But when the pile becomes mountains, papers spill everywhere, the desk collapses, and the whole office falls into chaos. That's fatty liver. And the miracle: clean up the desk, take away the sugar, give it space with fasting, let it rest with exercise, and the office can run smoothly again. The liver is astonishingly forgiving if we give it the chance. So as you sip your tea tonight, I want you to remember this. Insulin is not your enemy, but it is a powerful messenger. And your liver, though silent, is holding the keys to your future health. Care for it, and it will care for you in ways you cannot imagine. In the next part, we'll talk about why fasting insulin is one of the most important yet most neglected tests in medicine, why many organizations still tell doctors not to order it, and how you can use that information to truly understand your own body. My friends, in the last part, we touched on something that may have surprised you, the idea that insulin is not just about diabetes, but about how your whole body handles energy, fat, and aging. Now let's talk about a test that, in my opinion, should be a household word for every person over 50, yet most doctors never order it. That test is the fasting insulin. You've probably had fasting glucose checked. Maybe every year at your physical, the nurse tells you, don't eat after midnight, we'll check your blood sugar in the morning. And that's useful. But it's only half of the story. Imagine walking into a room, seeing a pot on the stove, and only measuring how much steam is in the air. You'd miss the fact that the burner is turned up to high. That's what it's like to measure blood sugar without insulin. Fasting insulin tells us how hard your pancreas is working to keep that blood sugar normal. If your glucose looks fine, but your insulin is sky high, it's like a car engine revving loudly while idling at a stoplight. You might look okay on the outside, but inside the machine is straining. I remember Clara, age 66, who came to me saying, Doctor, my labs are always normal, but I'm exhausted, my waistline is growing, and I feel something is wrong. Sure enough, her fasting glucose was 95, well within the normal range. But when we checked fasting insulin, it was 18. That number should have been under 6. Her pancreas was working 3 times harder than it should just to hold the line. And the saddest part, no one had ever checked it before. Now let me share something that frustrates me deeply. The American Diabetes Association, the very group you would think should champion early detection, has for years told doctors not to order fasting insulin. Why? They give 2 reasons. First, they say insulin assays, the lab methods used, aren't standardized across the country. And that's true. Some cheap tests accidentally measure a related hormone called proinsulin. But here's the thing, whether it's insulin or proinsulin, both mean stress on the pancreas. Both mean your body is struggling, so why hide from the truth just because it's imperfect? The second reason they give is that fasting insulin doesn't correlate well with obesity. Again, technically true. Some overweight people have low insulin and are metabolically healthy. Some thin people have high insulin and are metabolically sick. But to me, that's exactly why fasting insulin is so powerful. It separates body size from true metabolic health. It shows us who is silently at risk regardless of the number on the scale. Have you ever met someone who looks slim but suddenly suffers a heart attack at 58? Or someone who's heavy yet lives into their 90s without diabetes or heart disease? Fasting insulin helps explain those mysteries. It shows us who is metabolically healthy obese and who is metabolically sick thin. So what's the right number? Ideally under 6. If it's under 3, you're doing beautifully. If it's creeping toward 10, we start to worry about insulin resistance. 15 or above, that's a flashing red light, even if your glucose still looks normal. Now, for those who like a little more detail, there's a calculation called HOMA-IR, Homeostatic Model Assessment for Insulin Resistance. Don't let the name scare you. It's simply your fasting glucose times your fasting insulin divided by a constant. You can even find calculators online. A result under 2 means your body is still insulin sensitive. Over 3, and you're drifting into insulin resistance. Let me tell you about George, age 72, who loved math puzzles. When I showed him the HOMA IR formula, he went home, pulled out his lab slip, and calculated it himself. His fasting glucose was 98, insulin 12. The calculation gave him a HOMA IR of about 2.9. So I'm right on the edge, he said. Exactly. That was the wake-up call he needed. He cut out sugary drinks, started walking 20 minutes after dinner, and within 3 months, his insulin dropped to 7 glucose to 90 HOMA, IR to 1.5. He felt empowered because he could track his own progress, not just wait for a doctor's word. And that's what I want for you to feel: empowered, not helpless. To know that you can look beyond the red or green marks on a lab slip and actually understand what's happening inside. Now, I also want to acknowledge something. Sometimes when I explain all this, patients look at me and say, "Doctor, why hasn't anyone told me this before?" And I understand the frustration. Medicine today is busy. Doctors are rushed. Insurance companies don't reimburse for certain tests. And honestly, medical education hasn't always kept pace with the explosion of chronic disease we face. But that doesn't mean you're powerless. In fact, once you know about fasting insulin, you have a tool most people don't. You can ask for it. You can calculate your own TG or HDL ratio. You can pay attention to your ALT, even if your doctor waves it off. You can become the detective of your own health story. Let me share one last reflection here. Have you ever sat with a grandchild helping them with a puzzle, watching as they struggle, then suddenly the pieces fit and their face lights up? That's what understanding these labs feels like. For years, you've been handed puzzle pieces, cholesterol, triglycerides, HDL, without the picture on the box. But now when you see fasting insulin, when you see the ratios, the picture starts to come together. You see the story of sugar, liver fat, and energy all interwoven, and it is not too late. Whether you're 55, 65, or 75, your body responds. I've seen people in their 70s drop triglycerides by 100 points in a month. I've seen livers clear fat in half a year. I've seen insulin resistance reversed in people who thought it was hopeless. So my friends, don't let anyone tell you these numbers are just normal for your age. Normal today simply means common, and common means we're a sick society. You deserve better than common. You deserve vibrant, clear-headed, heart-healthy years ahead. In the next part, we'll tie all of this back to something practical. How your daily choices, what you drink when you eat, how you move directly shape those hidden numbers. We'll talk about sugar and alcohol, about fasting, about exercise, and how each one whispers to your liver and pancreas, shaping the story of your health. Welcome back, my friends. We've traveled far together already through the puzzle of cholesterol, the hidden story of insulin, and the quiet whispers of the liver. Now it's time to bring all this knowledge into the everyday moments of your life, because understanding your labs is only half the battle. The other half is knowing what to do with them. And the good news is this: you don't need a complicated plan, a shelf full of supplements, or the latest miracle drug. In fact, the most powerful tools are already in your hands, woven into your daily rhythm. Three simple levers can change everything: what you eat, when you eat, and how you move. 1. What you eat, the sugar story. Let's start with food. If there's one single change that lowers triglycerides and heals a fatty liver, it's this cut-out sugar, especially liquid sugar. I once had a patient, Richard, age 68, who loved orange juice. He said, "Doctor, it's natural. How could it be bad?" But here's the truth. One glass of orange juice contains as much sugar as a can of soda. And when that sugar hits the liver, without the fiber of the whole fruit, it overwhelms the system. Within a month of dropping juice and soda, Richard's triglycerides fell by 80 points. His wife joked that he'd become a water evangelist, carrying his refillable bottle everywhere. So here's a thought experiment for you. Imagine your liver as a kitchen sink. Sugar is like pouring sticky syrup into the drain. At first it runs, but over time it clogs. Now picture water clear, clean flowing freely. That's the difference between soda and water juice and tea. One clogs, one cleanses. But sugar hides in more than drinks. Bread, pasta, breakfast cereals, pastries, they all break down into glucose faster than you think. If you want a simple rule of thumb, if it comes in a box and has more than 5 ingredients, it's probably not your friend. Instead, focus on foods that speak gently to your liver. Oats that sweep cholesterol like a broom. Vegetables rich in fiber slowing sugar's entry into your blood. Nuts and seeds that provide healthy fats without overwhelming your insulin. Berries that sweeten life without spiking your liver's workload. I often tell my patients, eat food that remembers where it came from. An apple, not apple juice. A potato, not potato chips. The closer to nature, the kinder to your liver. 2. When you eat the gift of rest, the second lever is timing. You may have heard the phrase intermittent fasting. It sounds trendy, but in reality, it's ancient. For most of human history, we didn't eat 3 meals plus snacks plus midnight ice cream. We ate when food was available and our bodies adapted to periods of rest. Why does this matter? Because when you give your liver a break, 12, 14, even 16 hours without food, it finally has a chance to burn the fat already stored. Fasting is like sending the cleaning crew into that cluttered kitchen sink. Without new syrup pouring in, they can scrub away the buildup. One of my patients, Linda, age 72, was skeptical. She said, "Doctor, I can't skip breakfast. I'll faint," so we started small. She finished dinner by 7 p.m. and waited until 9 a.m. for her first meal. That's 14 hours. Within weeks, she noticed her morning appetite was calmer, her belly felt lighter, and her labs, especially triglycerides, began to improve. The key is not to starve, but to stretch. Give your liver a window of peace, and it will thank you. 3. How you move walking as medicine. The third lever is movement. And here I want to be clear, you don't need to join a gym, lift heavy weights, or run marathons unless you enjoy them. For most of my patients over 60, the most powerful medicine is something you already know how to do: walking. After every meal, take a gentle 15-20-minute walk. Why? Because as your muscles move, they soak up glucose from your bloodstream, sparing your liver the burden. Think of it like hiring helpers to mop up the spill before it clogs the sink. Studies show that even a 10-minute walk after dinner lowers blood sugar and triglycerides significantly. Let me tell you about Harold, age 75. He hated exercise. The word alone made him groan, but he loved his dog, Daisy, so we reframed it. Don't exercise, just promise Daisy 2 walks a day. He smiled, agreed, and within 3 months his labs improved, his waist shrank, and Daisy was happier too. Sometimes the best health plan has 4 paws and a wagging tail. Putting it all together, so let's imagine a day in your life with these levers in place. You wake up and drink water or tea, letting your liver continue its overnight cleanup until breakfast. For breakfast, maybe it's steel-cut oats with berries and walnuts, not a bagel or cereal box. Lunch is colorful salmon with leafy greens or beans with roasted vegetables. Dinner ends by 7 and afterward you take a walk around the block waving at neighbors watching the sunset. You rest overnight giving your liver 12, 14 hours of peace before the next meal. Do this not as punishment, but as a rhythm, a gift to yourself. And the numbers on your lab slip the triglycerides. The HDL, the fasting insulin begin to shift like the seasons turning from winter to spring. A gentle reminder. I know at our age, change can feel daunting. We've lived decades with certain habits, certain comforts. But remember this, your body is astonishingly forgiving. Even in your 60s or 70s, your liver can heal. Your cholesterol can shift, your insulin can calm. I've seen it with my own eyes over and over again. So instead of thinking I can't give up sugar or I'm too old to fast, ask yourself this. What small step can I take today? Maybe it's skipping soda. Maybe it's finishing dinner an hour earlier. Maybe it's walking with a friend after lunch. Small steps ripple into big changes. So my dear friends, remember the three levers. What you eat, when you eat, how you move. Sugar reduction, fasting windows, and gentle walks. Simple, natural, powerful. These are the tools that clear liver fat, lower triglycerides, and turn the tide on cholesterol. In the next part, we'll go even deeper, how to personalize these changes, how to read progress not just on paper, but in how you feel each day, and how to build a 7-day plan to set yourself on this new path. Scene gentle, uplifting, music speakers, tone soft but firm, almost like a trusted friend giving a blessing. My dear friends, we've walked a long journey together in this video. We've uncovered the hidden story behind your cholesterol numbers, the quiet role of insulin, the burden your liver silently carries, and the powerful ways you can take control through food fasting and movement. I hope you see now that your health is not defined by a single number circled on a lab slip. It is a living story and you are the author. Every choice, a glass of water instead of soda, a walk instead of the couch, an earlier dinner instead of a late night snack is like a sentence you add to that story. And here's the most hopeful truth of all. Your body is always listening, always ready to respond, no matter your age. I've seen it in 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds, even 80-year-olds. Cholesterol improves livers, heal energy returns. It is never too late to start. So tonight I want you to ask yourself, what is one small step I can take tomorrow? Maybe it's skipping the juice. Maybe it's walking after dinner. Maybe it's asking your doctor to check fasting insulin. One step is enough to begin. Now, if this message has resonated with you, if you've learned something new or felt a spark of hope, I'd love for you to stay connected. Hit that subscribe button because I will keep sharing these simple, powerful truths for seniors over 60 who want to protect their hearts and live with vitality. Leave a comment below. Tell me, what did you discover today about your own health story, or what's the one small change you're ready to make? I read every comment, and your story may inspire someone else. And of course, give this video a like if it gave you clarity, because it helps this message reach others who need it. You are not alone on this journey. We are walking it together, learning together, healing together. And every day you choose health, you are giving yourself and your loved ones the gift of more time, more laughter, more memories. So until next time, take a deep breath, hold on to hope, and remember, your numbers don't control you. You control the story.